The Territory was an instant hit when it landed here a few years back. It had the style, it had the quality, and it had the right price tag to entice thousands upon thousands of Filipino car buyers. Now, Ford Philippines is looking to build on this success as it introduces this all-new model in our market. It's bigger than ever before, but does that mean it's also better? Powering the new Territory is a 1.5-liter EcoBoost engine that generates 158 horsepower and 248 Nm of torque. That's about 17 horsepower and 23 Nm than what the old model could give you. Power is sent to the front wheels via a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. There are multiple drive modes available, but I have to be honest, the Territory does feel a bit sluggish when you're in normal mode. Switch to Eco mode and of course it's even worse. It's only when you're in sport mode that you'll actually feel that you have turbocharged power on tap. My biggest complaint here is just the drive mode selector is buried deep inside the infotainment system. Forget about switching drive modes on the fly because it can be a bit dangerous when you're looking at the screen while you're driving. That being said, as long as you have that part sorted out, you'll be fine. Because this DCT feels a lot better than the usual CVTs that you get from these affordable crossovers these days. Fuel economy doesn't take too big of a hit from that DCT either, because in mixed conditions, I got about 10 kilometers per liter. And on the highway, strictly on the highway, the gauge is telling me I'm doing about 13 to 14 kilometers per liter. One of the biggest selling points of the Territory has always been ride comfort. And for this next generation model, well, it's basically the same story, arguably even better. The ride is really floaty and NVH levels in this cabin are kept to a minimum. And these seats provide good cushioning as well. You've got a power adjustable seat and tilt and telescopic adjustment for the steering wheel, all of which come available even for this base variant. You also have a good vantage point from this cockpit thanks to this large windshield and these side windows. There's also a small gap between the side mirror and the A-pillar, and that does wonders for visibility from the driver's seat. Steering is way over on the lighter side, so maneuvering this one across tight parking spaces will be easy. It gets a bit heavier while you're driving at speed, but I do wish it had more weight to it for added precision, especially on winding roads. Speaking of winding roads, the crossover does feel a bit planted when you're on the highway or when you're driving through twisties. Fair warning though, tackle a corner a bit too quickly and you will feel that body roll. And you might want to get a good feel of the brakes right off the bat because these are quite powerful. Now this base titanium variant may not have all the bells and whistles as the top of the line variant, but it still has these handy features including blind spot monitoring, auto brake hold, rear cross traffic alert, and active park assist. I have to admit though that the added adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, and lane departure warning in the Titanium X do sound pretty nice. The interior of the new Territory is as premium as ever. Actually, it's even a lot better than the old one. You've got an abundance of leather and soft touch materials here on the dash, here in the side panels, on the center console, and a lot of leather on the seats. The steering wheel has this perforated finish that's actually nice to the touch too. And it has a two-tone finish with the blue up top and black underneath, separated by this faux wood garnish in the middle. This one's executed quite nicely. Now you got a lot of storage spaces here. You have this small cubby here, which also has a wireless charging pad. You have this cubby underneath as well, and you have this center armrest with a deep pocket underneath. You also have this small cubby here in front of the passenger seat. You can actually fit a wallet there or a cell phone, I don't know, and it has a rubber matting so your things aren't gonna fall off. You also have this large panel up front. It has this dual display system with this instrument cluster here and the infotainment system here. The gauge is actually pretty clear. You can see everything there from the temp to the revs to the speedometer and the fuel gauge. My only problem here is that it can be a bit tricky to operate because it shares one lever with this one. You have to press this small button here just to shift between setting controls and audio controls. But a bigger complaint I have are these controls. Instead of just tactile buttons, you have this panel that's almost like a touchscreen display. I'm not really a fan of those because it's hard to operate, especially when you're on the go. And you have the AC controls here on the display. Yeah, I could have just put some knobs here, some buttons. Would have been a lot easier for the driver. That being said, I like how some of the controls for this head unit are found down here. You can navigate a bit through the display or adjust the volume using these buttons and knobs over here. By the way, this display also has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity. CarPlay can also be used wirelessly. Before we move on to the back, I'm just going to show you how much room I have here up front. I'm about 5'5" and I have a lot of room here for my legs and for my feet, and a lot of room for my knees and decent headroom here. It's really comfy to be in this cockpit. It's even comfier here in the back than it is up front. You've got these nice soft leather seats with this armrest and cup holders in the middle. There's decent leg room here, and there's also a lot of headroom to work with. There's also a lot of elbow room back here, and I can imagine 3 of myself fitting here in the second row. You also have these rear AC vents and a single USB-A charging port here, as well as double bottle holders on both doors. The seats are a bit reclined, so if you prefer a more upright seating position on long drives, you might find this a bit uncomfy for you. But for me, this'll do. I can imagine myself sitting back here for hours on end on long road trips. Let's talk dimensions. As I mentioned earlier, the cabin is slightly bigger, and that's because the territory grew. This new one is 50mm longer and 32mm taller than the old one. It's also 1mm narrower too, but that's negligible. The new territory also gets a 10mm increase in wheelbase and an added 28 liters here at the back. In total, you're looking at 448 liters of cargo space here. One thing to note though is the lack of a power liftgate in this variant. Shorter individuals might have a harder time closing that door. Let's talk about looks, and let's start with the front end. Ford has also opted for these sleek LED headlamps with these nice looking DRLs to flank the new grille up front. This one's also a lot bigger than that of the old model, and in my eyes, it looks a lot better. I also like these fog lamps underneath. They look quite futuristic and a bit different from the usuals we see. Now, on the sides, it gets these 18-inch alloy wheels. Looks nice, but the Titanium X has better looking 19-inch alloys. From this angle, you'll also notice that Ford has toned down a bit on the plastic claddings. It still gets these black and gray trim underneath, but that's about it. Now, as for the rear, the new territory also gets these stylish taillights to match the ones up front. And as I said earlier, it looks a lot cleaner, so no more chrome strip in the middle. The base variant Ford Territory Titanium is priced at 1,335,000 pesos. While it may lack a lot of features that you can find in the Titanium X, the top-spec Territory goes for 1,599,000 pesos. Looking at its direct competitors, you have the newly launched GAC MQ that starts at about 1.4 million pesos and the Hyundai Tucson that starts at just a little over 1.8 million pesos. So yes, if you think about it, you can consider pricing as one of the pros in the new Territory. Others include, well, the interior. It's got great build quality. You have leather, soft touch materials, and a good mix of hard plastics all around. And of course, those seats are just nice and comfy to sit in. And third, ride comfort. The new Territory is just easily one of the best riding crossovers in the market right now. It's got a floaty ride, NVH levels are kept to a minimum, and it's just really nice to sit inside that cabin. Let's go to the cons. Number 1, the engine. It's a nice 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that, it packs a bit of a punch, but honestly, I just expected a bit more. The second, the controls. Ford really likes burying its controls inside the infotainment system, and it's just really not that easy for the driver to use it. Lastly, I guess it just has to be said that liftgate can be a bit of a hassle. Like I said, it is pretty heavy, so some people might find it a bit hard to close. I guess Ford could have just made the power liftgate standard. I know it would have bumped the price tag a bit, but it would have added a lot of convenience for would-be owners, especially those who intend to use this as a daily driver. Now, if I were to score this one, I'd give it a solid 8.5 over 10.